Well, we're still in Abuja, where European Union election observers are giving their report on the ongoing Nigeria election.
Our country. As regards making a difference, each election observation mission stands on its own merits. So we deployed here in early January and we began our process then. Nevertheless, our methodology means that we come back sometimes within 3 or 4 years to examine whether or not the previous missions conclusions and recommendations are leading to actual implementation. And the previous mission came back a year ago and examined the 30 recommendations and found that 13 of them were already implemented or partially implemented, which is, I think, indicative that we do make a difference, that our efforts serve to deepen the roots of democracy here in Nigeria, and we think it's the investment of time and expertise of our core team, our long-term observers, is appreciated. And if there is criticism, it is received in the spirit in which it's given, which is a mutual respect and an insistence on standards of democracy, which Nigeria already aligns itself to, and the standards that are contained in legislation here in Nigeria.
Thank you so much, the Chief Observer. We'll take more questions, if there are more questions.
Just one here.
Yes, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Chiamaka Okafo. I work for Premium Times. I have a few questions. First is to Mr. Andrews. In your speech, you made mention of lack of transparency and proper planning from INEC. I would like you to expatiate on that. And to the head of the EP delegation, talked about instigation of violence and, of course, violence through the process on Saturday. 2 questions there. Are you concerned about post-election violence? Did you get that? Post-election violence. And then secondly, like your counterparts, the US and the UK, there's been a promise to impose visa bans and sanctions on people who are found culpable for instigating violence through this process. Are you also looking at that too for political parties or political actors who are found guilty? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question. On the transparency, first of all, we acknowledge that INEC had to conduct this election in challenging circumstances. And we are very conscious that the Electoral Act provides a very important legislative basis and framework that instilled a lot of trust in INEC in the run-up to the election from political participants and encouraged many people to take part. However, the publication of figures in relation to permanent voting cards and how they had been distributed across polling units was not made available. The information about the distribution of permanent voting cards across states was made available very late in the process, so that it was very difficult for civil society members of the public here in Nigeria to verify or in any way audit the accuracy of those PVC numbers. And clearly that goes to the transparency of the election, and it is an area which we have noted in our preliminary statement. I'll just mention I'll let Evan speak to the question that was directed to her on security in due course. But on visa bans, the mandate of this mission is of any sort. We're here simply to observe the mission. That's a matter for the European Union, the European Council. We are aware that other jurisdictions have made those calls, but it doesn't fall within the mandate of this mission whatsoever. It would be considered an interference in the process. We're here simply to do that, and that's what has engendered a high degree of trust and credibility on the type of findings, conclusions and recommendations that we make. So I'll hand over, Evan, if you want to address the question about security.
Thank you very much, Barry, and thank you for the question. As stated in the statement, we of course condemn all kind of violence that have taken place. And we also call on all actors to adhere and respect the rules that are in place, and in any case of any disputes, that all disputes are sorted out through legal procedures. So this is our call on all actors in Nigeria, that all disputes should be sorted out through legal procedures. And we hope that everybody will respect and adhere to that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We are still taking more questions, please. Yes, please go ahead. Introduce yourself and the media.
My name is Ubale Musa, report for Deutsche Welle Radio. Sandro, if you are going to give this election, put it on the scale, if you are going to give it a rate, what's going to be your mark on it?
The question was, what mark would we give to the election? Now, our methodology doesn't allow for anything as clear as a mark. You can give a mark to me as a performing as a chief observer, if you wish. But so we judge and we assess criteria around election observation. And also on the criteria that are contained in international conventions, like the Convention on Civil and Political Rights that Nigeria is a signatory to, and against the legislative framework that applies here in Nigeria. So, and I also want to emphasize that we're midway through the process, that collation and tabulation is still going on as we speak in other parts of Abuja and across the country. So it would be, it's certainly not something that we would do in any circumstances, but we try to assess the election on the basis of inclusivity, on transparency and credibility, and we'll continue to gather up information as time goes on. Thank you.
Thank you again. Do we have more questions?
All right, that's Barry Andrews, Chief Observer with the European Union Election Observers, the European Mission, giving their observations on the election.